Hello and welcome back to Weston the Historian. So I got a haircut. Thank you for noticing, and I know it looks awesome. Today I will be talking about Mayan Revival architecture because this has recently been one of my personal favorites. My favorite things to look at. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing, and the whole concept behind it is really interesting. So I wanted to talk about it. To give the story of Mayan Revival, basically, a lot of American architects by the period, the Art Deco period, really wanted to create something that was uniquely American. Now, up to this point, American architecture drew most of its inspiration from Europe. Um, when it comes to New England and the northern United States, a lot of it was English. It was uniquely English. It took from the English and it took from the Dutch and even the French. And down in the deep south, uh, there was a lot of Greek revival, but it still was like an English style. It was a style that was popular in England, but it took a lot of influence from the Greeks, and of course, in the southwest United States, you had a lot more Spanish colonial. But the point is that all over the United States, there's a lot of architecture that you would only really see in the U.S., but it still was very obviously deriving itself from Europe and deriving its influence from Europe. And a lot of architects at this point in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even, really wanted to create a style that was uniquely American, unique to the continent. So they created Mayan Revival. Instead of taking influence from the English and the Dutch and the French and the Spanish and the Italians and the Greeks, instead they looked to the civilizations that already existed on the continent. So the Mayans, of course, because it's called Mayan Revival, but also the Aztecs and not so much the Incas. So I'm going to focus more on the Mayans and the Aztecs because they took a lot of influence from those. So something interesting about this Mayan Revival uh, look is it wasn't supposed to be like a pure historical revision where they were completely replicating the way things would have looked in Mayan civilization. It is Mayan Revival. It's not, Neo Mayan. It's not Mayan actually brought back to life. So they took Mayan inspiration, but they also took Aztec inspiration. Um, so what you'll notice is when it comes to the actual characteristics of these buildings, they do have a uniquely continental look, but they also look very modern. You can tell that they're modern. You can tell that they were built in the 1900s and not before Christopher Columbus reached America. And you can really tell. Um, so before I actually talk about what differentiates them, I do want to talk a little bit about the history. So I already talked about some of that. However, I want to talk about the first time this was ever used. So um, historians have traced the origins to a building called the Pan American Union Building, which kind of incorporated a lot of different motifs from Mayan styles and Aztec styles into this building, and it's just very interesting. There's floor mosaics, and there's just a whole lot of elements of it that are uniquely uh, continental, Aztec, Mayan, and as time progressed, the style developed. And, unfortunately, at least unfortunate to me, the style didn't completely take off, and you're not going to find cities built in this style, but you will find some buildings every now and then sporadically around there built like this. And one of the architects who really took this style and just took off with it was Frank Lloyd Wright. So he created a lot of buildings in this style, and something else about it I'm going to now talk about its characteristics. So I mentioned that it takes inspiration from the Mayas and the Aztecs, but it's also a very definite, it's very much definitely Art Deco. It's totally Art Deco. It looks Art Deco. So it has that kind of loud and very modern and very industrial look that Art Deco tends to have. Even blocky, it looks kind of blocky like Art Deco, but it has a lot of the kind of mosaics and the motifs and the ornamentation and the detail that you see in Mayan and Aztec styles. Now, of course, something interesting about Art Deco is that Art Deco architects and Art Deco furniture and interior was not really afraid of stepping out of the kind of Eurocentric mind zone and Eurocentric art and architecture. So you will notice that when you look at Art Deco in general, not just Mayan Revival, there is a lot of influence um, from places outside of Europe. You'll see a lot of Indian. You'll see a lot of Indian elements. You'll see Chinese elements. You'll see Japanese. You'll see African. But in this case, in Mayan Revival, it was Colombian, pre-Columbian. Sorry, not Colombian. Um, Mayan, Aztec, and you see this in all these buildings. So you've got these interesting patterns. You've got recreations of pyramids. You have details depicting Aztec gods. You have all these different things. So now, as my final part of the video, I do want to actually talk about some buildings that are in this style. So first of all, there is Robert Stacy Judd's Aztec Hotel. This was constructed in the 1920s. There's also the Henry Bowman House in LA, Frank Lloyd Wright, in the 20s, the Aurora Elks Lodge in Illinois, the Mayan Theater in LA. This is one that I personally really like. The Petroleum Building in Houston, the Casino Club Building in San Antonio, Fisher Theater by Albert Kahn, and the Guardian Building by Wirtzi Rowland. And a lot of these were all in the 20s and 30s. Which is interesting, but I personally really wish that this style had taken off. I wish we were still making buildings in this style. I think it's very awesome. I think Art Deco in general is very fascinating to me, but this little niche in Art Deco and the Art Deco scene is very interesting to me. I really wish Mayan Revival had developed, because the concept of a uniquely American, uniquely continental style of architecture is really fascinating to me and something I'm really passionate about. So anyway, that's all. That's all I wanted to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope this video taught you something new, and I hope you go and look at some Mayan Revival buildings now that you've watched this. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.